In this episode, we're going to be repairing this front grille on our Ford 120 tractor. As you can see on the right-hand side of the grille, there is a big crack there. So I'm going to be grinding it down, making some space so I can fill it with JB Weld and then Fiberglass Bondo, and then we're going to repaint, dress it up, and it's going to look like the crack was never there. Here is an up-close view of the crack. As you can see, it's completely broken off. The crack follows all the way to the bottom of the grill. This grill is made out of a cast aluminum, so it's not a super easy procedure for me to weld it. I don't have a stick welder with the capabilities to do this. So instead, I'm going to grind it down and use JB Weld to repair it. I've always had good luck with JB Weld for these sort of things. When you use JB Weld to fix a crack like this, the best thing to do is to grind at the crack and create like a beveled surface next to it, almost like a little valley. That way you can fill in the crack with JB Weld and give it more surface area to hold together. I'm preparing the metal almost as if I were to lay a weld bead in there, but instead of weld bead, I'll be using that epoxy putty that JB Weld makes. And notice as I'm doing this grinding, since I am grinding at cast aluminum, I am wearing a dust respirator to keep the dust out of my lungs. That is a really important safety tip whenever you're doing any kind of grinding of material. Here's what the bevel looks like after I ground it with the angle grinder. Now that I've got this kind of general bevel shape in, I'm going to grind away all the paint surrounding the area. That way I can further spread out the JB Weld and give it clean metal for it to stick to. The next step here is to clean off the metal with a degreaser or solvent and paper towels. This will give a perfectly clean surface for the JB Weld to adhere to. Now comes the JB Weld. First, I mix the two halves of the JB Weld. There's a black tube and a red tube. I'm not exactly sure what each part is. I think one part, the white part, is perhaps the catalyst that creates this chemical process to create hardening. But after you mix it together, it turns to like a grayish color, and then you know it is ready. Now, when I begin to put this on, you'll see that I use two clamps to clamp the grill exactly where I want it to. And then I proceed to fill in that little valley with JB Weld. I first put it in the cracks where they touch, and then I just put it on enough to fill the valley and put as much on there as I can. That will create a nice hard seal and hopefully hold everything together for a long time. After the JB Weld cured for a few days, I then took the headlights off, took all the letters off, and then I grounded the area where I JB Welded down smooth with the rest of the grill. And then while I was at it, I took off all the paint on the rest of the grill too, getting it ready for repainting when this process was finished. Now I apply Bondo to the crack to help smooth out the surface finish of it. The Bondo is not anything that's going to add structural strength to this repair. All it's helping me do is fill in the low spots that the JB Weld has kind of left behind. So what you do is you take the fiberglass Bondo and then you mix it with this hardener activator, and then you essentially just spread it out across this crack. There is a small kind of height difference between the left half of the grill and the right half of the grill that the JB Weld is kind of in between. So what I'm doing here is I'm just spreading it into any low spots in the void, and then I'm going to take my scraper and spread it evenly as much as I can, and then afterwards I'm going to hit it with sandpaper. And I'm going to repeat this process with Bondo and sandpaper a few times until everything is exactly where I want it to be. And by the way, when you use sandpaper on the Bondo, you want to wait until the Bondo is completely dry. I think it takes, I think the Bondo can says leave it for about an hour and then you can sand it. I'm not 100% sure. The can is not in front of me as I do this video editing process. So make sure you check the can for instructions. Once I'm happy with the Bondo, I then proceed to hit this grill with an epoxy filler primer. This will further help me with that crack and fill in any imperfections and make everything look nice and even. And of course, what follows primer is paint. Here I am painting this grill with Rust-Oleum white, and when I'm finished painting with this, we'll move on to other parts of the grill. This is the headlight bezel that I'm removing paint from. Now, important note also, the disc that I'm using on my angle grinder is one of the poly discs from Harbor Freight. I've used these poly style discs from a few different companies, and the Harbor Freight ones, you know, they last only marginally less time than the more expensive ones. So I recommend using the Harbor Freight ones. Again, these are not wire wheels or an abrasive grit. It's like a plastic material. It's great at removing paint quickly without marring the metal surface that's underneath. After all the paint's been removed, it's time for primer and paint. And ladies and gentlemen, here is the finished product. The grill, after all the repairs that you just saw. If you look to the right-hand side of the grill where the crack once was, it is now invisible. You can't even tell this was that badly damaged. I'm really happy with the way it came out. I replaced the headlights with LED bulbs as well as replaced the lenses. I'm really happy with the way this came out. It's going to look great when the tractor is finished. For high-quality aftermarket parts for your vintage Kohler K-Series Briggs & Stratton Tecumseh, Wisconsin, and Onan engines, please visit my website, iSaveTractors.com. I develop and sell high-quality aftermarket parts for all of your vintage and antique small engines. My name is Norman. Thanks for watching.